Hey everyone, welcome to my family's kitchen. Today, we're going to be talking about the things that I like to keep around in my family's pantry and freezer that help me be able to cook vegan meals. So today we're going to be talking about some specific categories. We're going to be talking about grains, nuts and seeds, beans, quick cooking meals, frozen and canned produce, and finally, spices and sauces. Keeping these things around should be able to help you also be able to have a pantry that's stocked and ready for you to cook with. Hey everyone, my name's Amy and I'm a certified personal trainer and nutrition student studying to become a registered dietitian. So, let's get into the video. Let's talk about grains, especially whole grains. Whole grains are proven to be very healthy for people and can help decrease risk for various chronic diseases. Because of this, I primarily keep whole grain products around. Firstly, bread. Whole grain bread is something I absolutely keep around. It's really useful for being able to make quick sandwiches like I do every single morning for breakfast, or you can also use it to serve along soups and salads. Another type of grain that I always try to keep around is tortillas. These are also very versatile and useful for making wraps, burritos, and even a quick pizza if you want to try that. Now, the type of tortilla that you're gonna keep around really depends upon you. If you really enjoy making tacos and Mexican-style enchiladas using corn tortillas, that might be a better option. I personally keep flour tortillas around because I prefer to make burritos and wraps. Next, let's talk about noodles. A bunch of different cultures around the world utilize noodles in their meals. So with this, there's a wide variety of noodles and pasta that you can actually use. My advice is to keep around what you would like to use. Personally, I like to keep around a combination of some Asian noodles. I also keep around whole wheat pasta. Finally, let's talk whole grains. Whole grains are the actual grain kernel that is still left intact. And there's a wide variety of these. Pick what you think you will eat the most. But even out of those, I highly suggest keeping one specifically around, and that is quinoa. Cooking on the stovetop, quinoa can take about 15 minutes, but if you cook it in a pressure cooker, then it can take only 1 minute of cooking time once it has reached pressure, and then some time going back down from pressure afterward. Now let's talk about nuts and seeds. Hopefully you are not allergic to these. If you are, this is not a category for you. I do not suggest getting things that you are allergic to. But nuts and seeds can actually be a really great way to get some healthy fats into your diet. I personally like to keep peanut butter around because it is one of my favorite things, but really you should keep around what you would eat. Now there are two types of nuts and seeds that I do highly suggest that you always keep around, and that is flax seeds or chia seeds around. And the reason is these are actually very high in omega-3 fatty acids and one of the main sources of this for vegans. Now let's move on to beans, the protein star for vegans. And I highly suggest you keep a few types of beans around because these will provide the majority of the protein if you're going for a healthy, whole food vegan diet. So the types of beans that I do suggest you keep around are going to be canned beans, dry beans, and beans in a cake. And we're going to talk about that last one in a little bit. So firstly, canned beans. These are your quickest and easiest sort of beans to use because you just need to open them up and they're pretty much ready to eat already. Now I do suggest looking for low sodium varieties because if you don't, you can wind up getting a huge amount of sodium, and having high amounts of sodium in your diet is actually linked to high blood pressure. However, if you can't find low sodium canned beans, then you can actually just rinse off all of the liquid in your sink and all the sodium will just go down the drain. Now, while canned beans are very easy to use, I also suggest keeping dry beans around. They are much tastier and tend to have a little bit of a better texture than your quick cooking canned beans. It does take a long time to cook dry beans though, but if you have a pressure cooker, The longest it will take you is about 30 minutes to cook. So I often use my pressure cooker as primarily a bean cooker. And they can actually be easy to use if you make a bunch of them and freeze them. Now, for dry beans, I do highly suggest keeping around lentils though. Even if you don't have a pressure cooker, they are very quick to cook. Finally, let's talk about cake beans. Beans in the shape of a cake, not in an actual cake, though I've heard that could be a thing. I'm talking about tofu and tempeh. So these are pretty unique in that they typically need to be kept inside the refrigerator. Tofu can be used to be crumbled into making tofu scrambles, can be turned into vegan ricotta, and can be used even to make really good sauces. Tempeh, on the other hand, is really good at being crumbled to mimic ground beef, and both of them can be cut into cubes and thrown into curries. Now, I know what you're thinking. A lot of people don't tend to like tofu, and that's because they typically try it alone. And when you eat tofu, or especially tempeh, without anything on it, it doesn't taste the best. So what you actually need to make those taste really good are going to be your spices and sauces that you marinate them in. So let's talk spices, sauces, and sweeteners. These are going to be really important for a vegan kitchen because this is where you get the majority of your flavor from. Firstly, let's talk about some spices. While the types of spices you're gonna have will really depend upon the cuisine that you're cooking, there's a few things that I do suggest that you just keep around in general, and these are cumin, garlic powder, onion powder, nutritional yeast, dulse, and cinnamon. Now, you've probably heard of several of these before, but you might not have heard of nutritional yeast or dulse. Nutritional yeast especially, it has high levels of glutamate in it, which is where we get the taste of savoriness from. And so used in low amounts in vegan cooking, it can provide a richness to a meal. However, it also has a really nice cheesy buttery flavor when used in higher levels, and so is a quintessential ingredient in making tofu scrambles and vegan cheese sauces. Dulse, on the other hand, is a really good source of iodine, actually. And so unless you're getting your iodine from iodinized table salt, I highly suggest eating some kind of seaweed in order to make sure that you are getting enough. So for sauces, it's really going to depend upon you much more than any of the other categories. While I personally do like to keep hot sauce around, it's not something that I'm actually going to put into a lot of stuff when I cook for my fiance. Now, there are a few sauces that I do suggest keeping around, primarily because they're just very useful in a bunch of different vegan meals. And these are going to be soy sauce, miso, liquid smoke, balsamic vinegar, apple cider vinegar or white vinegar, and finally, vegetable broth. Your soy sauce, miso, balsamic vinegar are three things that are really useful for providing a good richness to a meal. Liquid smoke is an easy way to make something taste like it was grilled when it wasn't. Your apple cider vinegar is great for baking. Vegetable broth is also incredibly useful as a base for vegan soups. Let's talk about some frozen and canned produce. These are some great items to keep around because they last much longer than buying your produce fresh all of the time. So firstly, I suggest keeping some form of frozen produce around. Personally, I keep a lot of frozen fruit because I like throwing that into my oatmeal in the morning when I eat that instead of my typical peanut butter sandwich. Now, if you're not someone who really eats any kind of frozen fruit, then it might be better to have some forms of frozen vegetables around as they, again, last longer and they cook quickly. Now, these are actually not less healthy than fresh produce. They actually can be slightly higher in nutrition because they're frozen pretty much right after they're picked. Now, I also suggest keeping some canned produce around, especially canned tomatoes. Those are really excellent in a wide variety of dishes, including soups, stews, chilies, all sorts of stuff. So with that, you can make your meals just a little bit quicker with both of those. Finally, let's talk about quick meals. I know that it's healthier to cook all of the meals that you eat, but that's not always possible. People get busy, things happen, and sometimes, for me, your family's spending the evening in the kitchen and you're getting hungry. I highly suggest keeping a few quick mostly microwavable meals around, just so that if you do get caught with a time crunch, you're still able to have something that is vegan around. Personally, I like to keep cans of soup. Now, if you're not the sort of person who enjoys cans of soup, you can also get other sorts of things such as microwavable rice meals, as well as a variety of frozen things that you can get. These are not the healthiest meals always to be eating, but if you are in fact in need of something that is really quick, it is a good idea to have some of these around. So I really hope that this video helps you with what to keep around for vegan cooking. If at any point you did enjoy this, please hit the thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe, because I will be giving you all more vegan-centered and nutrition-centered content. All right, so I hope that you always remember to love God, eat greens, and get moving. See you in the next video.